All right, greeting. This is Jean-Claude Mutuku, and welcome to the Canadian in Me, where we build communities one story at a time. As we promised, we're back as if we never left, and this time I brought you guys a guest so that you don't have to stick with me with my boring voice. Today we have no one but Chance Mutuku. Chance is going to give himself, a quick introduction. And then from there, we will continue. This is going to be a very casual discussion. But remember, the purpose of this discussion is to build communities one story at a time. So again, welcome. So a quick snapshot of what we'll be talking about today. So there have been I'll say the waves, the media, Twitter, Facebook, and everyone knows about the situation that's happening in Canada. So more graves that belongs to Indigenous people have been found. So these are unmarked graves, sorry, and it's bringing a lot of discussions and talks about reconciliation, about residential schools and how impactful they were to so many Indigenous families. They divided families, they cost people's lives, they disrupted culture. And this discussion basically brings that immigration or immigrant point of view to just try and look at the issue, the topic. And this series will basically be looking at what role do immigrants have to play in trying to understand and somehow mitigate some of the issues that are happening. The other big question that I want to ask our guest today is, do immigrants have a role to play? Do they have a voice? And if they have a voice, what is that voice? And what role should they be playing, if any? So, my friends, this is Shans Mutuku, and I'm going to let him introduce himself before we dive into the topic. Shans, welcome.
Thank you, Miigwech. as as I've been learning lately, to greet. What's up? Thank you for having me. My name is Chance Mutuku. I am a creative entrepreneur. I run a design and creative studio here in St. Catharines, Canada, Ontario, or most people would recognize the area as Niagara Falls. And that company is called Blanc. Yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell. I'm just a creative individual who is looking to use my skills to contribute to the wider global community.
Thank you so much, Shans Mutuku. And by the way, there is a connection there. I think I've known Shans for a good amount of time, and I think we've worked together on a few projects. But the reason why I brought you, Shans, is I understand your immigration story. What is it, first of all? Where do you come from? And as an immigrant to Canada, first of all, do you acknowledge the fact that we are on a land that was occupied? And as an immigrant, what does that mean for you or for your story?
Yeah, so Congolese by birth. I was born in a small and beautiful city called Bukavu in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Sounds
And
familiar.
you've been there before? You should
Yeah,
visit.
I think so.
I heard it's quite a nice place. And then yeah, grew up. Obviously, moved to Uganda as a refugee, and then from Uganda we immigrated to Canada, which is now home, and I can proudly say that I'm now a Canadian citizen. Yeah, so obviously I acknowledge the fact that there were people on this land which I call home now, before I was here, and since I love this country so much, and all the more than thankful for the opportunities I've gotten over the years to obviously continue to chase my dreams. The news that we have gotten lately, which has been a fact for a long time, but I feel like the rug is being lifted, is truly sad. And from an immigrant's perspective, yeah, it's definitely a call for us to speak up, rather than just watch the injustices take place and watch people in denial and not really say anything. I think we're obligated to say something for sure as proud Canadians, because that's the Canadian spirit.
Absolutely. And that's interesting, but I just want to take you back a little bit. So to play, that kind of like devil's advocate. Now, as an immigrant, really, one could say, well, you came on this land and you found that the injustices had taken place back in time. How would you respond to that kind of attitude? Because yes, as an immigrant, you come in and you're so grateful to, let's say the government that brought you in, or the states that brought you in, which again, like myself too, I share the same immigration story as you. There is that element of generosity. You're so happy to be here that sometimes you are willing to just step back and let the issues take care of themselves. So how do you respond to that? Because you kind of innocent, you just found the issues and the problems had already happened. Now, as an immigrant, do you have a role to play, and what is that?
For sure, yeah. And I look at all these things from a humanist perspective. As an immigrant, you're coming obviously from conditions that were perhaps in most cases worse than what you have now, right? So the first instinct is to be thankful, and um, but the thing that I've been learning a lot more about lately is there's a difference between being thankful and settling for what you found. Yes, don't get me wrong, I am beyond thankful, but there also has to be that extra layer. I'm thankful for what I have, but sadly, we're finding out a lot of truth about what happened before. As you said, yes, we're innocent in this sense, right? Because we didn't really partake in it. And it truly does suck that, a place that you thought was perfect, from the perceived images we had before, has some things that are hidden under the carpet per se. And as unfortunate as it is, we want this place to be just all perfect and everything. That's not how it is. And um it's again a time to for sure, not even like, if yes, you can be proactive and everything, but I think the step before that is to just listen and acknowledge the truth, accept that these things happen, and then from there we can all come to a general consensus of what we're each gonna do to make things better.
Wow. Yeah, that was great. And by the way, again, just to recap on that, uh, absolutely. As an immigrant, of course, the first thing when you come here, especially if you come from a country as ours, let's say the DRC, which is a beautiful country, but which has been burdened by wars and turmoil and, so many deaths and stuff. The first thing your first reaction is, yes, I'm here. I'm going to do everything possible to be the perfect citizen in this perfect country, which, based on our context, absolutely makes a lot of sense. You have, education, you have access to health. And unfortunately, there is that element of like complacency, I think, that, comes in because you almost believe so much in the purity of this great place that we now call home, that you sometimes tend to forget about the same injustices that could be happening behind our closed doors, or even in our own backyards. Talk about, let's say, things like homelessness, talk about racism, systemic racism, but also that issue of injustices that were committed, and to a certain degree continue to be committed against Indigenous people. And that's definitely something that we have to kind of look back and almost awaken ourselves to understanding that, guess what, we are grateful, we want to participate in this beautiful, this great country, but to participate in it wholeheartedly, we also have to acknowledge, I think you used that word, acknowledge the fact that we have issues that we have to settle. We have problems that we have to address. But then now the question becomes, as immigrants, and I'm talking about people who've been in Canada less than 20 years, what role do we have to play, if there is any? And how do we play it without having this attitude of, we want to fix things, but rather, what's the most effective way of doing it, considering our story, our immigration story.
Sorry, repeat that again.
Yeah, I know that was a lot. I guess the best question to ask is, as an immigrant, what can we do to, start almost participating in that reconciliation phase, if we have a role at all? Yeah.
Yeah, we 100% do have a role, each and every one of us. Um, the first thing always is to listen. Just listen, and
Listen
then
to who?
to the people, to the people obviously that have been. I don't want to call them victims because it seems like, again, I'm undermining, but people who have experienced this injustice. Listen to their stories, and as much time as it may take for us to truly understand, and if we do end up understanding, when if somebody is talking about the trauma they had, sometimes these things are just like they're 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 almost like unbelievable, to the point where it can go both ways. Some people can say, oh no, that just sounds terrible, I'm not, that's not even true. Or you just get saddened. But whatever that is, we have to at least do our best to try and just listen to these stories. And then from there we can try and find out the best way forward. I don't have all the answers. So what I'm personally trying to do, is to just educate myself. Look online and try and find more information on what exactly happened, and then yeah, from there on, again, as a whole, we can get into then discussions that will hopefully end up with plans to try and make things better.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I can't agree more, right? Like, I think listening is one key element of problem solving. And I mean, I've been in situations where, let's say, as a black man in Canada, I've experienced, let's say, police. They have stopped me a couple of times and XYZ. And you go out to talk to a friend, and the first thing they want to ask you is, "Are you sure? Are you sure you're not doing something bad? Like, are you sure you're not looking suspicious?" And I mean, as a person who had experienced that moment of trauma by interacting, let's say, with the authorities, right away, like there is that element, like, I just wanted you to listen to me. You don't have to have those answers. And you're right. So sometimes, and in most cases, we have no answers to these, let's say, questions or inquiries, or even when we see things, we read, for instance, the discovery of more unmarked graves. We don't have to have all the answers, but I think you said a very good word, which is listen and educate yourself. Listen, understand from listen to the voices of the people who have gone through those traumas, and then also be open to them inviting you, which is actually one of the most important thing, because in most cases we kind of like what from the outside don't have the answers, but by being open to invitations from, let's say, indigenous people or any other people who have experienced these kind of traumas, then we will have a better understanding or even an eye opening on our own. And maybe we could have some kind of like a contribution towards the discussion. And but I think the most important thing that you talked about was just listening and self-education, because also there is a lot of information out there. There is a lot of educational information out there, and I think sometimes um, a lot of people kind of like just say, you know what, I'll call, let's say, an indigenous person to teach me or to inform me. But what about also our role? Like, I think we also have something to play, especially when it comes to self-education. And then when we need that, supplementary information, of course, we can also have these discussions. But, that self-education, listening, and being open to discussions, and to being invited in these communities and learning about that. What do you think about that? I know I just spilled a lot of words, but what do you think about that, if there's anything?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I totally agree with you. And the other thing too that I've been thinking a lot about is, and it also just connects with especially the discussion that we were having last summer about injustice against people of color and just all these issues is um it's just there's there's a layer of like actually a group of people who will bring politics in front of the underlining issue you know
Mm.
and I feel like sometimes that can cloud the the true issue that's being spoken about
Yeah.
so with what's going on, especially with the indigenous issues as of lately is right usually what we see is like there's something happens, and then as rather than coming at it, just looking at it as humans trying to move humanity forward. It's like I see issue X, left and right.
Hmm.
Let's go. You know what I mean? And then it
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
about voting. No, this is about
Yeah.
bringing somebody into the elections, taking somebody, and we forget the underlining issue.
Hmm.
And then I feel like a lot of times what ends up happening is that issue continues to
Yeah.
evolve and to mutate,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then it gets swept away.
Yeah.
But the two or however many political continue to go at it. You
Yes.
know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
I think with all these things that are going on, we still have to keep the focus on those things and just
Mm.
look at it as a human.
Mm.
If you had your grandparents and they were in these schools, and somebody was trying to cleanse
Mm. Mm.
them of themselves, who they are,
Mm.
how would you feel about that just as a human? Is that right? you know
Yeah. Yeah.
um is that something you would even wish upon your worst enemy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's just the stance that we should keep when we're looking at just these things that are going on in the world, these
Mm. Yeah, so we're having a bit of some connection issues, but Shans was talking about the importance of humanizing.
supposed to look at this, just look at it as a human.
Yeah, yeah. You froze a little bit, so I was gonna
Oh, yeah,
talk
you're
about,
right.
but it's great. I know, like you spill a very good speech there, but yeah, you're talking about like the importance of humanizing it, and
Exactly.
one of the best ways to do it, again, I'll keep going back to that, listening. Listen to these voices, and I know we may have political views and social views and different perspectives on the issue, but the best way to humanize it is to look at the people who are telling those stories and listen to them, listen to what they're trying to say, listen to what they're trying to ask, and become accommodative. Like if they have some kind of like a proposal that they have in mind, listen to it, and then talk to them, walk with them as we try to. I don't think there'll ever be a solution, because I don't think there'll ever be a solution to resolve or address the deaths that did happen in the past, right? But like going forward, how about we walk with them, and sometimes even learning to walk even behind them, let them take the lead in showing us how we should be going forward, rather than us proposing how they'll be moving forward. Now, again, bringing that immigrant, perspective. So why is it important? Let's say if you're looking to another immigrant sitting out there, what do you want them to learn about this issue, and how should they become involved? What's the first step that they can do in case they haven't even had a chance to think about it? Because we're still in this la la land. We very appreciative of what we have, that we have forgotten about the real issues. What should be the first step that they should take if they haven't taken it?
So I think it all starts with internal work. You need to realize that yes, although you're an immigrant, you came to this land, but you are Canadian now. And as a Canadian, it is again your obligation, it is your moral and obligation as a citizen to stand up for other people, for other Canadians, because the indigenous people are Canadians, you know. And the other thing too is, especially as you see it, especially a lot in the immigrant communities, you you still feel like, yes, there's, the people who brought you here, and you're here.
Mm,
You need to realize that you also have a voice, and your voice matters. We have, as a people all together, we have like a lot more power than, or not even power, because that's also another interesting word. You
mm,
have a lot of ability to initiate change. um and it's just that realization that your voice can help, can
mm,
contribute to things becoming better. um yeah, and speak up. No, it is, I'm thankful that we live in a country where, people can voice their opinions and not get kicked out. You won't get kicked out of being a Canadian for speaking up for the truth. So speak up and don't be afraid.
mm.
That's it.
Yeah, that's a very great angle. And Sean's talked about, that citizenship element of it. But I'll even go as far as saying, you find yourself on this land, whether or not you're Canadian. I try to think myself as like a human being who feeds on this generous land of ours. You notice injustice, like Sean say, you have, and you feel like you have a say, which I actually think we all have a say. Please don't shy away. Think about it as this is your land and you're witnessing something that isn't right or that should be happening. What about you voice it if you have an opinion about it? If you feel like it doesn't resonate well with you, feel free to speak up about it. Again, I'll go as far as saying whether you're Canadian or not, you on this land, let it be a land of justice. A land that for me, I usually go back and say, well, I want to be in a community or in a country where my kids, will be safe. A conducive environment where I will grow old without fearing about how my neighbor sees me, or how the police is going to stop me, or if somebody's going to come and just beat me because I'm black. The same, like the same mentality, I think, should drive me. So you know what? I want to create that inclusive community, and best way to create that inclusive community is by understanding, like I say, that we all have that opinion, but also that we can stand for justice and address injustice if we see it. And I thank you for bringing that up. I think we all have that part to play, and also you talked about that element of almost like class that oops, somehow comes with the package. Being an immigrant, it's like, oh yeah, I'm an immigrant, but I feel like I have to kind of like stay in the shed and just like be humble because I'm so thankful I came here. I'm like, wait a minute, you're now in Canada. You if you have something to contribute, it's going to make our country better. So what about you voice your opinion? What about you speak for truth? And what that's doing, I think, is actually making our countries better, inclusive. When it talks about arts, for instance, you're an artist. Why would you hide your artistic abilities just because you're an immigrant? I don't think that's the case, all right? Come up, do your art. If it's a speech, come up, speak the truth. You have a business idea. Why should you hide because you're an immigrant? Come forward, contribute to the, building of this country or this community that we're trying to live in, so that it can benefit everyone, including yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's the other thing too that I truly am proud of. Especially people say say things all the time about this younger generation, the Gen Z, the millennials, and often, more often than not, you hear things that are a bit just degrading. But the other thing, we forget about the other side where where now we're living in a world where people are a lot more outspoken than how we our parents and grandparents used to be, because for them it was just survival. Do what you got to do, and then whatever happens. We're seeing a lot more, especially younger people, speak up. So I am optimistic about the future, and yeah, the truth is going to continue to come out, with technology being, advancing, with, again, with the rise of social media and information being readily available to the masses, and these younger cats will they will find information whether or not, you want them to. And so, in a way, maybe this is like a message to people who are in denial. It's, you sooner than later, you have to come to terms with facts and reality. And yeah, just listen. If anything, just accept that, you know things happen, terrible things happened. And yeah, just stop denying the fact that these things actually happen to real people, and many of whom are still alive today, to tell these
Mm,
terrible stories.
mm.
So yeah.
Wow, thank you, Shans. Definitely, I think we will come back to this topic because we'll try to have like as many series as possible and try and get a different perspective on the issue. But thank you so much for your, I think, refreshing and insightful uh, perspective. Once again, remember, we're doing this podcast to personally to acknowledge the fact that yes, this country that I call my own now, that I'm so proud to be part of, has a history in the past. And again, as a person who, again, identify not only as an immigrant, but also as Catholic, also because there is that other lens that I'm sure we can have another podcast. I understand how painful that, kind of like how triggersome that is to so many people. And for me as an immigrant, I would just like to say that statement that, I acknowledge it and I'm listening, I'm willing to learn. This podcast is part of that, to have these discussions. So if you have something to say, you're an Indigenous person, but also just any other person who may have a constructive, you know, point of view to bring to the table, please join us. Let's have these discussions because I think we have to start talking about them. However difficult they may be, the best path forward is a path of listening and engaging in dialogues that are productive, but also that are helpful in, you know, taking us towards the right direction. I'm getting distracted by these notifications, but Sean, thank you so much. Any last words?
Last words is, and just coming from an African perspective, there are so many incredible parallels between even like the indigenous, cultures that I continue to learn, between, there's parallels between the indigenous practices and African practices. It is quite profound. Just certain things like spirituality, the respect for nature, the respect for the planet. I think there's definitely something to be said. And, if, as we were mentioning throughout this whole conversation, once we all just get to that place where we begin to listen, we will come to realize that all of us as a whole, we have a lot more in common than we think. And some of the answers that we're continuing to seek for in the world, like, who are you? What is your identity as a human? Where do you stand as far as like spirituality goes? How can we solve things, like, issues that the planet is facing? A lot of these answers, I can more than I can confidently say that a lot of these answers, or there's guidance in a lot of these philosophies. So yeah, and the other thing too is there's there's I've also been reflecting on the philosophies of, there's a Europe, more so European philosophy of, I think therefore I am. And then in the African tradition, most of the communities operate on I am because they are. You know what I mean? And um, I think just everybody kind of like speaking up, and especially from the immigrant community, it's us like tapping into that. If we're out here lounging and there's a group of people that are, suffering, then inevitably you're suffering without even knowing it.
Yeah.
But if we stand up for the next person, our neighbor, and we help them when they're or we listen to them when they want to be heard, at the end of the day, we're gonna end up in a place where the world is much, much better and in equilibrium as a whole. So yeah. And again, I am personally looking to continue to learn. So if anybody out there has more information, resources, you have a story you want to tell, just reach out. I'm all ears.
Wow, there is no way I can, follow that up. But thank you so much. That was really well put. Shans, how can people find about you, your business, and you also have a podcast, don't you?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Conversations with Chance Mutuku. You can find it on all platforms, however you take your podcast. And you can find me on social media. Lately, I've been a lot more active on Instagram. I'm slowly deviating from, Facebook, but shoot your shot.
Why, man?
What's that?
Facebook is the way, man. What's up? Why are you
I
leaving us?
know, I know. There's way too many notifications. I actually
Oh, yeah.
haven't been on Facebook for more than 20 minutes in the past year.
Hmm.
So yeah, whoever is listening to this and you try to hit me up in February, you know why. So I Chance Mutuku on all platforms, and yeah, if you're looking for design or anything creative, you have an idea you want to bring to life, contact me at chancemutuku@blanc.com, and I'm sure Jean-Claude will have that information in the description below. So yeah, until we chat again, thank you for having me, and
Wow.
this has been great.
This is a great conversation. I mean, I always have, a great respect for your perspective sometimes. And it's always fun, exploring ideas, but also talking about important topics such as this. Ladies and gentlemen, all the listeners out there, this is Jean-Claude Mutuku and Chance Mutuku, and that was the Canadian in Me, where we build communities one story at a time. We're
We
out,
have the
and
same last name. What a coincidence.
oh yeah, we have a common. Oh, well, that's we're both African, aren't we?
Quite.
Yeah. By the way, for those people who are wondering, so there is a relationship between myself and Chance, and I think it's a cool relationship. Anyways, so thank you so much, and we look forward to chatting with you. Don't forget to subscribe again if you have a story, please.